Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the Danny Show. Today I have a very special guest. His name is James Sharman. So, James Sharman is a prominent figure in the world of sports broadcasting, known for his insightful analysis, engaging commentary, and charismatic on-screen presence. Sharman has established himself as a respected voice in sports journalism, particularly in soccer, covering major soccer events such as the English Premier League. His passion for the game, combined with his deep knowledge and articulate delivery, has endeared him to audiences across the globe. Whether dissecting tactics, analyzing player performances, or sharing captivating anecdotes, James Sharman continues to captivate sports enthusiasts with his expert insights and infectious enthusiasm for the beautiful game. He is notably famous for his role on Sportsnet Central as a TV anchor on Soccer Central specifically. That is where I became familiarized with him. He has obtained a Bachelor of Arts in Media Studies from Ryerson University, now known as Toronto Metropolitan University, TMU. And now Mr. James Sharman joins me live. How are you doing, James?
Daniel, I'm doing great, thanks, mate, and thank you for the kind words,
No
as
problem.
inaccurate as they might be.
No problem. No problem. My pleasure. So I can start off the interview by saying, what inspired you to pursue a career in sports broadcasting, particularly soccer?
Mainly because I wasn't very good at playing it,
Okay.
and
I
honestly,
see.
Daniel, I mean, if I had the choice, obviously, like most broadcasters in sports, we'd love to play the game, right? Play
Right.
sports, and I
Exactly.
love playing sports. I
Exactly.
played, you name it, I played it. But
Hmm.
never obviously even close to be good enough to actually, do it for a living. So what's second best? In that case for me, it was broadcasting, it was media. I love talking about sports. I've always
Hmm.
loved talking about sports.
Right.
I thought there was very much a hole in the market for Canadian soccer broadcasting at the time as well. So that was really the inspiration. It beats working for a living, right? Just
Yeah.
talking about football matches,
Hmm.
and finding a way to get paid for it. So that was really the main inspiration.
I see. Yeah, yeah. I guess most soccer journalists, sports journalists, like go into sports broadcasting because they didn't play as well in their younger years, I guess.
Yeah,
So,
precisely, right? Exactly. I
yeah.
mean, if you're there's very few former athletes who actually become hosts, right? They become
Hmm.
pundits or analysts, right?
Right.
It happens now and again. In England, you have Gary Lineker, who was a legendary footballer. Now he hosts BBC's football coverage.
Hmm.
But yeah, generally speaking, that's your option. If you can't play and you don't want to get into, the administrative side of the game or the sport, get into media because it's a ton of fun.
Yeah, for sure it is. And but yeah, I'm happy to hear that you're in media, and now that you're, been like in the industry for quite a while. What has been like the most fulfilling experience for you covering like the major soccer events we have here in not only in Canada but around the world?
For me, it's just building soccer brands around, TV shows or podcasts. It all started, I guess, with Sports World, a show I did at the Score many years ago that evolved into the Footy Show on the
Right.
Score, which was backing up its Premier League coverage, and
Hmm.
then moving to Sportsnet for a few years, and now more recently, my Footy Prime, the podcast brand. Right, I
Right.
love doing that, doing it our own way, my own way, how I think sport should be presented. So that's probably the biggest thing. I remember back in 2010, that World Cup.
Hmm.
That's when the footy show really became, it grew into its own. Myself and Christian Jack, Sid Seixeiro, Brendan Dunlop.
Right.
That was almost like my perfect TV show. It took a long time to plan, but
Right.
basing it around that tournament was
Hmm.
probably, the most pride I've had until Footy Prime more recently.
I see. I see. So we're gonna get to Footy Prime, the podcast, later in the interview. But my next question to you is, what are like the some of the key differences between covering, live soccer matches in person versus like providing commentary in like a studio?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. It's very different. Obviously, live studio is great because as much as there's no, safety net, because what you're saying is being broadcast straight away, it's still a
Right.
studio setting, right?
Right.
So you can kind of bounce off the pundit beside you, or the producer can read your mind, throw boards up. You've got more leeway. You're doing a live match. If you're calling it play by play or doing a
Right.
report from the sidelines, there's nowhere to go, right? What you
Right.
say is so important. You better make it really count, and describe and paint the picture that the audience it maybe cannot see if it's on radio, for example. So I'd say there's more pressure. I found way more pressure doing live play-by-play
Mm-hmm.
and sideline reporting than I ever did doing studio. Studio, I love doing studio. It's probably my favorite thing to do,
Right.
but there's less pressure, I think. You got more options to bounce information off.
I see. Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah, that you shared that with me. That's pretty spectacular. So now that you've done reporting both in studio and in person, can you share like a memorable experience or story from your time reporting, whether that be the English Premier League or any other soccer matches?
Yeah, there's been lots. I mean, I remember doing a live hit on Tim and Sid's show on
Uh-huh.
Sportsnet, and I
Mm-hmm.
was in Houston. It's for the Gold Cup, I think it was, and
Mm-hmm.
it must have been 40 degrees out there. I'm in this parking lot doing a
Right.
pre-game hit, and I'm wearing these cheap shoes, which began melting to the tarmac
Mm-hmm.
in the parking lot. So I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
this live hit, and my feet are getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And I said, fellas, I know Tim and Sid quite well. I said, guys, I can't move my feet. And they're actually stuck to the tarmac,
I
the
see.
pavement in the parking.
Wow.
That was pretty funny. But apart from that, as far as other stuff, I mean, listen, getting the chance to interview David Beckham, Cristiano Ronaldo, post match after they came to Toronto a couple of times, that was
Wow.
always cool. I love interviewing. It's probably my favorite part of the job, whether it's professional footballers, sports people, or just pundits.
Mm-hmm.
I've always enjoyed that. I've had a chance to, interview some pretty famous people over the years. So that's probably the biggest draw, what I take the most from it. Even though they're short interviews, Ronaldo, Beckham were short interviews. But, at the time, you're in this kind of scrum kind of setup, and everyone else around me kind of froze
Mm-hmm.
with Beckham in particular. No one said a
Mm-hmm.
word. So I had this one-on-one with him basically for like 5 minutes. It was great. They were standing around me, but I don't
Yeah.
know whether they were starstruck or what it was, but it was quite amusing.
That's pretty incredible how you had an interview with David Beckham and Ronaldo. I know it's only for short, but just to be in that presence, that's pretty spectacular and so special for sure.
Yeah, it is because I mean those two guys they transcend the sport, right?
Yeah, for sure they
And
did.
they're also very media savvy. So Ronaldo didn't say too much. He's when he just joined Real Madrid from
Oh, right.
Manchester United, asking him about comparing Sir Alex Ferguson to I forget who his coach was at Real Madrid when he first got there. Was it Zidane? I forget now who it was when he first got there. But just comparing them and how they differed and the
Right.
similarities was pretty cool. And
Hmm.
Beckham was more about just do you miss the Premier League? Do you miss playing in England? It was a good easy low key conversation.
Yeah, I see. So, talking about like the two players that have been in the Premier League, what do you think of the English Premier League this season? That kind of ties into my next question.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm really enjoying it. It seems as if at this point there's a three-horse race for the title with Liverpool, Man City, and Arsenal. I think
Right.
those three teams kind of separating themselves from the
Exactly.
chase impact, but there's really good teams, right? Even at the other end of the table right now in the
Mhm.
relegation zone, Luton's there. Luton's been
Yeah,
a great story. So
it
I
is.
think
It
it's been a
has.
high quality season so far. It's been a lot of fun, a lot of drama. Um, but when push comes to shove, the big boys are going to be the big boys, right? And they're going to
Yeah.
rise above. I don't see the Chelseas yet, or the Tottenhams, or the Man Uniteds just yet
Yeah.
rising and competing for those other
Exactly.
spots. But yeah, each week a surprise can happen, right? We saw
Yeah.
yesterday,
Exactly.
we saw Man City, just narrowly squeak one out against Brentford, right? So
Yeah.
it's been very enjoyable.
Yeah, it's been enjoyable. Like the two teams that I feel really kind of surprised me and surprised a lot of English Premier League fans was Aston Villa and West Ham United. Just the way that they acquired so many different players that not a lot of big name clubs could acquire, like Diaby or Pau Torres. A lot of big name clubs like Liverpool, Chelsea, Man United wanted to acquire them, but they didn't, and they've been outstanding. Even Mohamed Kudus for West Ham has just been stellar, and do you feel like, because I'm a Man United fan, do you feel like they can squeak in a position to go to the Champions League this season?
You know what? If you asked me that question a month ago, I would have said no.
Hmm.
But now here we are, and they're getting results, right?
Right.
They're not playing great football still. They're
Yeah,
not,
exactly.
it's not typical United, but they're
Mhm.
grinding out results. I think it's four straight wins now. I think they're three back of Spurs. And
Exactly.
bear in mind, there could be five spots, right, this year
Yeah,
for English teams in the Champions League for the first
exactly.
time.
Mhm.
So yeah, if Ten Hag keeps doing what he's doing and keeps leaning on the younger players, Hoyland's playing, such great football, scored in six straight games.
Right.
The kid Mainu, my God, he's 18 years of age.
I know.
He's fantastic.
He is amazing.
One for the future and the present, right? You lean on him
Yeah.
as well. There's a lot to like about United. Now, you know, I think you're going to see a lot of changes this summer,
For
especially
sure.
with Jim Ratcliffe coming in now. It's announced, I
Hmm.
think, officially today. He's now got 25% of the club
Exactly.
running the entire football side of things.
Hmm.
So I think if you're a United fan, you should see a lot of light at the end of the tunnel here. It's been a long tunnel since
Exactly.
Fergie retired back in 2012,
It
right?
has.
So I think things are looking pretty good. Some exciting young players coming through there. So yeah, I think this year they can find a way to at least finish fifth, and that would surprise a lot of people, I think.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like you said, there's that light at the end of the tunnel. I think there's a lot of promise for this young team. I mean, Manu and Hoyland have been stellar, and Garnacho. These three, I think, have a young. They're so young, and they have so many years to go, and they're not even in their primes yet. But I'm imagining like down the road in a couple of years, they could get into that top three conversation for sure.
Yeah, well, the key now is Daniel is can they sprinkle in the right veterans around them, right? That's what
Exactly.
Alex Ferguson did. You look
Hmm.
back to the class of '92, not a fair comparison, but that great young talent coming through with Beckham and Scholes and then
Yeah,
Neville's and Nicky
yeah,
Butt.
yeah.
You had Cantona was there already. You
Mhm.
had Ryan Giggs there already, but then he brought in the likes of you know a young Cristiano Ronaldo, Roy Keane,
Yeah,
um, eventually a Rooney. He brought the right players at the right time to
exactly.
complement the core of the team, and that's how
Mhm.
you build championships, right? So is
Exactly.
Ten Hag the man to do that? I don't know,
We'll
maybe,
see.
but if not, it'd be someone else.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens with the Premier League. It's interesting times as a United fan. So
Yeah, I bet.
yeah. So I'm gonna segue back into our conversation. So what are some of like the biggest challenges you faced as a sports broadcaster, and how have you managed to overcome them?
Yeah, honestly, if you asked me, back when I was at Ryerson a long time ago now, would I be a broadcaster? I would have said no chance. I had no interest in being a broadcaster.
Hmm.
Didn't want to be that center of attention. The thought of being in front of a camera with all the lights and talking to a big audience would have terrified me, right? So I kind of organically fell into it. I found producing a lot more enjoyable, and I thought I'd be going that route. But when your boss comes to you and says, "Hey, listen, you should be hosting this show that you're producing," it's tough to say no. And it took me a long time, I think, to find the confidence to. I had that imposter syndrome for a long time. I still do to a certain degree, quite honestly.
I see.
I shouldn't be on air, I should be doing other stuff, right? So
Right.
I guess I'm still battling those demons, which is why I
Hmm.
find podcasting so much fun. It's so more free
Yeah,
compared to traditional broadcast television.
exactly.
Um, but yeah, I think just getting over myself, quite frankly, and realizing actually, yeah, maybe I do a half decent job. Maybe people do seem to be enjoy my coverage, but that took a long time. I used to take it very hard when you get negative feedback from viewers and listeners, and you know how the soccer audience is, right? They can
Yeah,
be pretty opinionated, shall we say? And then once
exactly.
social media was born, I mean, Christ, they had a one-way street to get to you, right? So
Exactly.
that was tough to adjust to. But now I find it, if I get negative feedback, I find it quite amusing. It's usually someone that's jealous.
I see.
That's simple.
I see, I see. So, since you've been in this industry, you face challenges with the digital age arising and stuff. Um, do you think with the growing influence of social media, do you see the landscape of sports journalism like just evolving in the digital age?
Yeah, I do. In some regards, it's hard to get a seat at the table, so to speak,
Hmm.
in the traditional broadcasters. And in Canada, there's so few of them, right? You got Sportsnet and TSN, right? There
Right,
aren't many.
right.
But if you look beyond that, there's so much potential to start your own brands now through social media. What you're doing here, Daniel, for example, it's fantastic. This
Thank
is a
you.
great way, not just to start right, but you can begin earning this way eventually as well. It takes a while.
Yeah,
But
thank
when
you.
I began, you couldn't cut your teeth on this kind of stuff, right? It wasn't
Hmm.
available to you. You had to
Hmm.
just find a way to traditional media. Whereas now you can try and do whatever you want. There's so much out there. If you're unique and you're original and you're insightful and you're entertaining, you can be successful. I watch traditional sports TV now, and I hate it. It's so bland and it's so boring. When I did it at Sportsnet, there were times I felt it was boring and bland and just the same, no matter what the sport was, the same cycle. So now we've kind of evolved from there, with podcasting, with YouTube being a great platform for anyone. You can just try new stuff, right? And I
Hmm.
think it's really exciting. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard to earn, and we all want to make money to do
Hmm.
it. And the money is still right now with the big networks. But I think if you're a young broadcaster, um, you know, cutting their teeth, it's a good time to try things, right?
Yeah, for sure it is. For sure it is. Like I wanted to know actually, we're gonna go backtrack a little bit. So how was your experience at Sportsnet Central? Like, because you say like you right now you're more entertained with the whole concept of podcast, but how was your experience
Yeah.
at Sportsnet Central like?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Great
Hmm.
people.
Hmm.
Um, I think when I was at the Score, we were smaller, right? It was the Score and then TSN and Sportsnet. And then Sportsnet seemed like the big league, so to speak. And I wanted eventually to get a chance to see what it was like on the other side. Because
Right.
at the Score, we could try whatever we wanted. You know, we could try and throw things at the wall and it might stick, it might not stick.
Right.
Whereas Sportsnet, this is where we do things, right? And I pitched my old footy show to Sportsnet so many times. And the response is always, you know what? No, this is how we do things over here.
Hmm.
And listen, it was fine. It was safe. It was a bit vanilla. I love covering the Premier League and the Champions League, you know, and obviously with the big budget associated with Sportsnet, you could do many great things, and it carried a lot of weight too. When you're trying to get an interview, you say you're with Sportsnet, you know, you get the interview.
Hmm.
So that was great, and like I say, good people. But I just found the actual, you know, the concept of sitting behind a desk in a suit
Hmm.
talking about sports, I still find it a little bit ludicrous,
I see.
right?
I see.
The worst part is when you're at a training session and you're interviewing footballers who are coming off the session, they're wearing their shorts and their shirts and they're sweating, and I'm wearing a full three-piece suit. It's like, why? This doesn't make sense to me, you know?
Exactly.
How's the audience or the player going to relate to me? I look like a banker for crying out loud, right? So that stuff always frustrated me a little bit. I don't know if that will ever change with traditional broadcasting, but listen, I enjoyed it. Like I said, great people. I've got great friends now, Danny Dickio, Craig Forrest, you know, who I
Right.
met through Sportsnet. So yeah,
Yeah.
no hard feelings there whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly. I think with the traditional format, it's definitely changing. I mean, you have your own podcast now, Footy Prime the podcast. I'm going to put the link in the description below for y'all to check it out. What made you kind of establish it? Did you feel like since the traditional format of like journalism was kind of changing during COVID, when COVID hit the journalism
Mhm.
industry, everything kind of died down? Do you feel like you had to make that in order for you to like bring that, you know, kind of journalism back into the world in a new way?
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, I did a podcast back in 2007 with the Footy Show, right? That's the first podcast,
Right.
and it did really well. It got a real cult following. And then we
Right.
never did that at Sportsnet. And then the last year I was at Sportsnet, we saw the writing on the wall with the Premier League rights and the Champions League rights going to DAZN. We
Hmm.
knew that this wouldn't last for long. So quite honestly, Craig, myself, and Danny Dickio thought, well, you know, how do we stay relevant? You know, we could be losing our jobs at any time now. Got
Right.
to stay relevant. Let's start a podcast. And that's how it
Exactly.
kind of started.
Hmm.
Um, so, you know, it was honestly out of just self protection, really, keep our brands somewhat alive, but it also allowed us to try and do things, you know, differently and just have more fun with it, right? Not
Yeah.
care about offending people, you know, dropping the odd F bomb here and there. Real talk, right? And it's a real cliche in sports media, real talk, because usually when you say this show's real talk, it isn't real talk. It's still contrived, scripted nonsense. But
Right.
this really podcasting is real talk, right? It's no
It is.
script,
It is.
just shooting the shit between yourselves, having fun. And you know, I always say this is why I'll die on this mountain. You know, I want people to think that they're sitting beside us at a pub or a bar
Yeah.
talking football. That's
Exactly.
the feeling I want to get from it, right?
Yeah.
And straight away we managed that, right? And we accomplished that. And I think people are taking to it. And it's just fun, right? It's sports,
Yeah.
right? It's not life and death. It ain't that important. So why should we try and pretend that it is? Just have fun with
Yeah.
it.
I think like you said, I think podcasts brought in like a very personal experience between you and the viewer. Um, Saying that we are just like you. We're just like the guys that go to the bars and we just want to hang out and we just want to talk sports. With the traditional format, I feel like there was that boundary, like, okay, we're the professionals, you don't know anything, but they do.
100%.
And you kind of level it out with podcasts like I'm doing with you right now. Um, we're not in suits, we're not, you know, dressed up in a really professional way, but we're having fun. We're having a lot of fun, and it's just been incredible. Like I'm so happy for you and the podcast, and yeah, thanks for coming
No,
on.
thank you. But you bang on there, Daniel.
Yeah,
It sports fans nowadays, there's so much sports to watch, right? They know what they're
mhm,
talking about, right? Every
exactly.
sports fan's an expert to a certain degree. So how dare we think we can sit down and talk down to the audience, which is what
Right.
the traditional way of doing it was, and
Hmm.
still is in some regards, and like
Exactly.
treating them like they're idiots because they're not. You know, football fans in particular, they'll let you know if you're talking down to them. Don't patronize, don't condescend. Have a conversation with them, right? I'm
Right.
not a teacher. I'm not telling you the way things are. I want to converse with you. And that's the way I always
Exactly.
think you
Yeah.
do sports media. So I think you're 100% right there.
Thank you, James. Well, thanks for coming on the show. One last question before we wrap things up. Any sort of advice you would like to give aspiring sports broadcasters who are looking to follow in your sports footsteps and make a mark in the industry?
Yeah, find a different career path. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Like I said, you know what? There's opportunity out there right now. I know it's easy to you see the glass being half empty, and there's a lot of people out there complaining about the industry, and we're seeing all these massive layoffs at Bell just recently. Rogers did the same thing, and there's that side of it, yeah. But there's also, if you're talented and you like what you're doing, you can build your own audience, and then
Exactly.
sponsors will begin to pay attention. It
Hmm.
just takes time. You have to be patient, right? There's a million podcasts out there right now, and there's some really good ones making lots of money, but we can't all be Joe Rogan. But there's definitely space there still, I think,
Hmm.
to make a living out of it, and just like reinvent the way we do sports, reinvent the wheel, really try it, because I think the audience out there wants that. They're growing tiresome. We're seeing streaming networks popping up all the time. The big boys, the ESPNs, the TSNs, the Sportsnets, they're all really worried right now because suddenly they got competition for the first time ever. I think it's a
Right.
positive thing. If you're young and you're hungry and you're prepared to put the work in and be very patient, there's absolutely potential.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential, and I feel like podcasts, like you say, it's the new norm of journalism now, and I feel like they're
Mhm.
pushing out the traditional formats like TSN, Sportsnets in some shape or form.
Yeah, 100%
Yes,
right. And that's where they're trying to get into podcasts now as well. And there's some
that's for
great
sure.
podcasts on those networks, but they're still network,
It's
still
still a
kind of
network, right?
broadcast into it, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Well, James, thank you so much for coming on the show. James Sharman, everyone, you can follow him on his Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. I'll put the links in the description down below for y'all to go and check him out. Thank you, James, for doing this. I really appreciate it, man.
Hey, thank you, Daniel. I really enjoyed it and good luck.
Thank you.